All right, everyone. We'd like to welcome a very special guest and a friend of the SCGA's, Mr. Geoff Shackelford. Thanks for joining, Geoff. Great to have you on.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Yeah, we're less than 24 hours removed from the conclusion of a thrilling Genesis Invitational at Riviera, where we saw LA's own Max Homa outlast Tony Finau in a dramatic playoff. And Geoff, believe it or not, Max is actually the first ever guest on this podcast.
Oh, nice,
so
Jonathan.
There's some good juju there. There's some good juju there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But seriously, it was awesome to see Max so emotional. You know, it clearly meant a lot to him.
Yeah, we rarely see that. Well, I should say rarely, but we don't see that kind of thing happen, and it's such a Cinderella story that he wins the tournament that kind of inspired him to become a pro golfer, and he shares all that, and he's not afraid to share that. I mean, some of them are so buttoned up these days there, they don't want to give a little sign of anything. And so having Max, it's always fun when somebody from Southern California has won the tournament, and I've been going long enough now to have seen it happen a few times. But this was extra special because he played well there last year, and he's been playing well on the West Coast swing. And as he explained, everything that really meant something to his getting to this point in golf was surrounding that tournament, either Riviera or the Genesis Invitational / many other names from the past, and of course Tiger Woods. And so that was quite neat to see, and of course kind of sensational golf on the last day too by both he and Tony Finau, a 66 for Max and a 64 for Tony. It's awfully good playing at Riviera.
Yeah, it was pretty wild, and it was a shame that somebody had to lose there, but that's kind of how it goes. What were some of your other takeaways from the week? I know you were on site there. Did anything stand out to you other than, obviously no fans and things being a little different COVID-wise?
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot like a college tournament when you're out there, and you so nothing against, say, Sam Burns, but you do wonder if a player hasn't been in contention much, if there's a difference, and it's easier for them, and I think it is. But as you saw, of course, on the back nine, the pressure did get to him, and the sense of what was going on. You have the blimp still overhead, and you still have people fussing around with cameras and moving around and trying to get in position. So there is a sense that the tournament is on the line, but it's definitely just not even close to the same when there are no people there, and obviously it's just not as fun to go. So I hope this is just a one-time thing because and naturally, of course, it happened to be the week we get just for beautiful days. Of course, play stopped, so we did have that on Saturday, which was unfortunate and really a product of modern greens being too fast when it gets windy, and that's just where we're at in the game, and it's unfortunate. I've been at the last two. One was at St. Andrews and one was at Riviera, and otherwise tough days for golf, but nice days, and that was certainly unusual to see. And of course Sunday they didn't mow the greens or roll them, and they were probably a foot slower, and you saw the scoring and you saw the pace of play. I don't know if you noticed, they just played at a lovely clip, and it just shows you really, to me at least, shows me the kind of the ridiculousness of pursuing these absurd green speeds. They don't do a lot for the game, and they kind of deaden some of the skill factor of actually having to stroke a putt as well. So it's
right.
It was good they finished on time, and it was a great day Sunday. So that's what we're most grateful for.
Yeah, we'll get into that a little later. I got a couple questions for you, but in the meantime, is the infrastructure sort of the only thing holding back Riviera from hosting major championships? I mean, anybody that's been there understands the parking and hospitality limitations, but the course is just so damn good.
Yeah, it is. That said, LA Country Club has a lot of things going for it right now, but it also has some things like any venue that limit what these organizations can do. I guess just so much of it is really it really has nothing to do with the actual golf, which is the sad part. It is about infrastructure, right, and space and corporate tents, and it's a little depressing how many times venues are picked based on tent space, and I think going forward, that's going to be a big change for golf in the next 5 to 10 years, and I don't know how it's going to go, but there's going to have to be a reimagining of what we want from a tournament venue and how many people we want there and what are the important things, and maybe there are ways to do the whole corporate thing differently where the revenues for the nonprofit organizations are the same, but the experience is something that requires less space and all the stuff that goes with having a corporate tent and hospitality and food, and because it is disappointing when a place like Riviera is ruled out for that reason. That said, we get to see it every year in the Genesis, which is now one of the really top 3 tour events that's not a major championship based on field and ratings and pre-tournament excitement. And Riviera will host 2 events in 2028 with, as far as I know, unless something changes, the Genesis and then the Olympic golf. So it's definitely still very much a big part of the game in that sense, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's fair. And, I think the Riv certainly gets its due, and all those players just absolutely love it. So just changing gears here, though, there was big news in the association world this past week when the USGA announced Mike Wan as their new CEO. He abruptly left his post as commissioner of the LPGA in January, which now makes sense as to his intentions. What are your initial thoughts on the hire?
Well, in terms of initially, the reaction kind of speaks for itself. He's well liked. He brings a lot of energy. He brings a different style than the USGA's ever had for somebody leading it, and immediately sort of changes certain perceptions of them just by hiring him. And I think that was the prime reason for doing so. That he's somebody who he had the longest run ever at the LPGA. He did all he could do, I think, there, and it was probably time for a new challenge. Obviously, my interest in the distance issue is one that makes me a little concerned because Mike comes from an equipment company background, but and I haven't read all of his comments yet because we had the Genesis last week, and he had a lot of comments. He gave a very long press conference call, but he seems to be in line with where the USGA and R&A are trying to go, and I'm encouraged by that. And maybe he's the perfect person to sort of bridge the equipment companies and the governing bodies and try to figure out what's best for the game and the skill factor. And because right now the companies are they're really kind of stubborn about what they do and what they sell and how they sell it, and they don't really seem too open to possibilities. A few years ago we had spring-like effect, and we had the USGA budge on adjustability, and that was a really good thing for the manufacturers, and they're not even at that point of kind of being open to that kind of thing again. So maybe Mike Wan's the guy who can make that difference and kind of get past this, because I think it's pretty clear. We don't really want to see the game going where it's going, where it's just kind of all about bombing a drive and putting. And that's boring to watch. And if you read the LA Times today, there's a great story on baseball, and you read it and what they're doing with their ball, and you could just fill in the blanks. It's the parallels with golf are really fascinating.
Yeah, 100%, and that's a great bridge to our next topic here. A few weeks ago, one of the more complicated issues in golf magically reoccurred with this distance report, I guess the second iteration of it. What exactly happened when the USGA and R&A released their findings?
Well, what happened? We had some complaining from manufacturers. We had a few players complain, generally kind of parroting their company's positions. But that was really about it. I think most people were pleased to see a little stronger position taken. They made very clear they've kind of made up their mind that something has to be done. Now, what is it? We're putting it out there on the table for you all to comment on. That was kind of the approach, and I liked that. The thing that struck me as surprising and bold was the idea that they put everything on the table, Jonathan. They didn't just go kind of ball aerodynamics and driver face, which were the things that were sort of hinted at in their previous report. They put everything on the table, from grooves to the head size of the driver, and on and on. And that was kind of a sign that they're getting a little bit tougher, because that basically just sends all the companies on a chase to write papers and justify their positions on a lot of different things. And I think it showed a sign they were a little fed up with maybe a lack of cooperation. So we're still several years away from anything happening. The one thing that back to Mike Wan, that he said in his initial comments that nobody at the governing bodies has been able to say for years, and he just whittled it down to a very simple thing that you need to repeat to people who think they're going to suddenly lose 30 yards. There is a difference between what most of us get from equipment and what the pros get, and
exactly.
They just have to make sure that divide hasn't gotten carried away. It has. I mean, it has. We can see the things that are going on in pro golf, and they get exponentially more benefits from the equipment, and that's not really great for them, for their game, the way it's played. It's not really great for the sport, and but that they need to make that point more, that this is not going to affect you if they do it right. Now, they could mess it up and do it wrong, but I think they know how to do it in a way where most of us would not be impacted at all.
Yeah, totally. And to that point, do you think we'll ever see the bifurcation? In other words, a professional ball and/or set of clubs, and then a separate amateur set or a regular set, quote unquote?
I think it's possible. I think they'd like to avoid that, but they've certainly put that out there with the concept of a local rule. And this gets to that same discussion. Will they be able to just say, hey, look, if we do this with the face and we take 15 dimples off the ball, that's going to make it a little harder for the DeChambeau style, the bomb and gouge style, to tee it up at 4 inches. And by the way, if they reduce the tee to 3 inches, that would make a difference too. But it's a way for them, if they can do it properly, they don't have to bifurcate. But I have a feeling, the way things are going and what you see in the reports, is that they are getting the sense that there's not a lot of wiggle room from the manufacturers, so they're gonna be a little bit tougher on this topic, and we may end up having to bifurcate if the two sides can't find a way that addresses the problem without really going down the path of two sets of equipment rules.
Right. And, do you think the manufacturers push back on these potential equipment drawbacks? After all, they are publicly traded companies, so it's safe to say they might not have the betterment of the game top of mind, rather their stockholders as any other major corporation. Is that an issue?
It is, but there's also an issue, which is, I think, the most fascinating thing, since I've been kind of borderline obsessed with this topic for 20 years, is that 15 years ago I'd get a certain kind of response, and the most interesting response I got this time to the report from golfers. There are a lot of golfers who are in business, and they enjoy this story as a business story as much as a golf story. And their question that I got this a lot in the last 10 days or so, is kind of the opposite of your question. Is there a point where they're being stubborn, the companies, and not open-minded, leads to a point where they're actually not doing the right thing for their shareholders, not doing the right thing for their company, by having a more open mind and maybe creating a path to non-conforming beginner equipment that would be great for some sales and great for the game, or are they going to be so stubborn that they back themselves into a corner and actually make the situation worse for them as companies selling a product? And it's fascinating to get people now seeing the issue and seeing that stubbornness and wondering if they're actually not doing the right thing for their company. So it's a it's a tricky thing for the manufacturers, but I think what they've shown is that they're just very stubborn about trying to sell everybody the same stuff the pros play. And I just don't know if that mentality at this point is carries the same weight that it did maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, totally. And a lot of that falls on the marketing and all that messaging. But, I do know a few tour players have shared their thoughts about this topic recently and suggest that it's not the equipment that's the problem, but potentially the modern golf course design. So I believe, I believe it was Webb Simpson that suggested more dog legs, higher rough, smaller greens, all things that would obviously benefit Webb and his game. But I digress. With your design background, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, that's something we've heard and addressed. I'm consulting with Gil Hance at LA North for the U.S. Open, and we just moved a bunker for the second time in 10 years or 11 years. It's not easy to do, and it costs money, and it changes the design for the people who play there the rest of the time, and that's just gone on at so many courses, and so much money's been spent, and more time added to the rounds. I read a piece today about Riviera. That if you just have it firm and you do this and that, it can defend itself just fine. Well, the piece left out, they've added about 400 yards of distance, and the greens were 13, and they had to stop play because of that. They were probably 12 on Sunday's final round, and they played in the maybe as fast as I've seen the threesomes there play. And the scoring was way better, just taking a foot off the greens. So all those defenses that are pressures placed on courses, and that's what the USGA and the R&A are trying to get away from, is this idea that it's the course's job to sort of defend and protect certain norms in the game. And it's a pressure the courses can't bear, and pro golfers just seem to think it's everybody else's job, and they, if you took the money out of their pension, they might to pay for these changes, they might change their mind, but they're pretty stubborn on this topic, and generally pretty selfish. The irony, of course, Jonathan, is that the two greatest players of all time, in our lifetime at least, and actually you can throw in Bobby Jones too, in a previous generation, all have been in favor of something done equipment-wise and skill-wise, and Jack Nicklaus started this in his prime, saying that, Bobby Jones in his prime, and Tiger Woods later in his career, but even they get kind of mocked for having that point of view, which tells you how the debate goes when three of the greatest kind of get mocked for their stance.
Sure. Yeah. No. Absolutely. And we'll put this topic to bed with you here with one final question. The average handicap of an SCGA member is around 15. So, will any of this ever impact those mid to high handicap amateur golfers? Or, as you said, most of this added distance is at a certain swing speed and above. So, will any of this actually affect the average golfer?
It just depends on how they go about it. I don't see that happening. But they could do something with the changes that does impact that golfer. But nothing I've seen so far indicates that, and everything that they've put out in terms of asking for input suggests that they're looking to avoid that. And I say looking to avoid. I don't even, that makes it almost sound extreme or like they're tiptoeing. I think it's just a simple fact. We know that certain club head speeds are going to get certain benefits from this equipment, and certain ones may not get much. And if they do get impacted, it's going to be so small, and in theory, depending on what is approached, is whether it's the ball or the driver, everybody in your group would be impacted too. But I just don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I would probably tend to agree with you. So we're gonna put that subject to rest, and we will check back in on you next time they drop some distance report for us.
Absolutely. My pleasure. I've been talking about it for 20 some odd years, so what's another couple of years talking about it? I'm fascinated by the topic, and as you know, it puts a big burden on golf architects, and the irony, by the way, Jonathan, is that golf architects could be pro distance because they'd make more money changing courses, but all but 3 have come out against the game continuing to expand, because it is, let me tell you, it is just such a headache when you're trying to design a hole or figure out a safety issue or all the other things that come with it. It's the least enjoyable part of designing courses, and it's you don't want your architects spending their time on that. You want them spending time on creating interesting golf holes.
Totally agree, and that's another great bridge here. So we mentioned your chops as a designer, and you just mentioned Mr. Hans. You teamed up with him to design a fan favorite of the SCGA's and me specifically, Rustic Canyon. You designed that back in 2003. One of the more unique experiences in all of Southern California, if you ask me. In fact, I just played there yesterday, battled the winds as usual. But what are you most proud of?
They were open yesterday. Wow, that's impressive, because I had a
feeling
they might be closed.
Yep, they were open, unfortunately, for our scorecards. So, what are you most proud of when you think of that project?
Well, we got away with a lot. I'll put it that way. In terms of, and I say got away, not on the regulatory side. We did have a lot of battles trying to get it built and convincing people that we were not moving much dirt and they were trying to leave the existing plant material. And the other courses built around that time were not doing that. So we faced a lot of skepticism. But so I'm proud of the fact that we were able to convince people what we would do, and in that sense, and keeping the natural feeling of the place and the natural plant material, and using what was there. I mean, we moved maybe 17,000 cubic yards of dirt, which is just literally almost nothing. It's the 8th green and the 12th green, and that's about it. But ultimately, I'm just proud of the fact that we kind of, and I say, got away with things that aren't normal anymore in golf architecture. A few very close green to tee walks, and little pot bunkers and wide fairways, and a lot of things that people just think are kind of strange, and especially at the time were still considered strange, and more people have really come to embrace that and embrace the fact that we tried to make it fun. Obviously, it's not as fun on a Santa Ana wind day, but we really didn't design for that, because there's most days it's a sea breeze. But it's pretty neat to hear how much people continue to enjoy the course and find it enjoyable to play, and also find it to be a good test of skill.
Yeah, it really is. Full package there. It's the the experience and the walk, but also, it's definitely testing your golf game. So anybody that hasn't gone up to Moore Park and check out Rustic Canyon, do so. And Geoff, honestly, that's it for me. This is just a terrific chat. So thanks so much for joining, and we'll be sure to have you on again.
Okay, Jonathan, anytime.
All right, take care. We'll see you around.
All right.
Take care.